Hi everybody, welcome back to the channel. I hope you're all doing well. So the plan for today is to play a little bit more Hytale and to read through some more Reddit stories that I found, and we can hopefully discuss our opinions on what we think is going on in the situations. I'm still pretty new to playing Hytale, so nothing crazy planning in this video. I'd like to explore the map a little bit more and see some more of the world, and also to build myself a cozy little bit of a starter home if we get that far in this video, so let's see how that goes. For our first Reddit story, we have my 23 female boyfriend, 24 male, wants to move in with me. I want him to live alone first. My boyfriend and I have been together 10 months. He lives with his parents in their 50s and younger brothers 10, 16, 18. No sisters. Before current events, he was over my place basically every night. A couple nights ago, he said he wants to move in with me if I'm up for it. I've been to his place more than once, and I've seen how their dynamic works. His mother does everything for all 5 of the men in the house. Cooking, cleaning, the whole works. Basically, all they have to do is put their laundry away after she washes, dries, irons, and folds it. The reason the parents aren't forcing them to contribute is that this was the parents' agreement. He works, and she's a stay-at-home mum, so she raises the kids, runs the household, and he pays for everything. With one of the clauses being that she's doing everything so there's no need to involve the boys in housework. As a result, my boyfriend cannot do anything. I don't know how much of this is actual cluelessness and how much is him trying to get out of stuff, but he told me completely sincerely, and I checked this with his mother, that he can't even fry an egg, which is why when he suggested moving in together, I said I wanted him to live alone first. His plan was basically to go straight from his mother's house to my flat. I told him my hesitation, which is that he can't do chores. He then offered to pay more rent, 75% even, in exchange for me doing all of the chores. I said no, I don't want to be his mother or his maid, I want to be his girlfriend. Then I told him I wanted him to live alone, go from his mother's house to his own place, figure out how to do all the things he's never done for himself, learn some basic life skills, and then we could revisit us living together. This has caused a huge argument, the biggest we've ever had. He's taken me saying he has no life skills as an insult, which it kind of was to be fair, and he has basically said that clearly I don't want to live with him at all, as I've pushed the moving in time back and have only said we'd revisit after a few months of him living alone. And I did say revisit because I wanted to make sure he actually knew what he was doing and wouldn't immediately switch back to offering more rent for no chores. This was all a couple of nights ago now, and he stopped talking to me. He's at his mum's, he's online, he's talking to mutual friends who have said that he's responding, but he won't answer any of my calls or texts. He's told our friends what happened, and apparently they're all on his side, saying I was really mean and cruel. I love him, and I do want to live with him eventually. I just don't want to live with him if I'm doing everything. And the one thing I don't want is him paying extra for me to do all of the housework. Is there some kind of compromise or some kind of option that I'm not seeing? What can I do to fix this? Okay, so my first thoughts when I'm reading this is that the writer is really wise and sensible beyond her years at only 23. I think it's really brave to have stood up for herself in a relationship and said, I've seen how your home life is and how the dynamic is in that family, and that's not something that I want to take on and kind of make my own. It can especially be difficult when she says that she really does love him, she really does want to live with him. The problem is that while someone could come from any kind of home life and situation where they're not taught anything, they can go out their way and kind of learn those things and start doing those chores for themselves if they're so inclined. So I think maybe if she speaks to him and is kind of convinced that he is willing to do those things, then maybe it'd be worth moving in together. Because the risk is that she sends him to live on his own first. He does that for 6 months, a year, even longer. But then as soon as he moves back in with her, because his expectations are for her to do all of the chores, he still stops doing those things, even though he's capable. So I think she's got to be really clear and make sure that they're on the same page with chores before they do eventually move in together. But I hope that they can sort it out, and I really don't think this should be a relationship deal breaker, especially where they're so young. It doesn't sound like the boyfriend has ever moved out of his parents' house before, so obviously doing that for the first time is a big adjustment for anyone. Let me know what you think in the comments. What do you think of a man and a woman's roles in a relationship and the kind of chores that they should be doing, and what would you do if you were either the male or the female in this situation? I think it's a really interesting topic. So our next story My husband has a new chosen family that he prioritizes and sees every week. I'm jealous and frustrated. My husband John and I are mid-30s and we've been together for 8 years. We've been through a lot of big life stresses together and it has strained our marriage. We've worked hard through 2 years of marriage counselling to rebuild what we had. I'm now 8 months pregnant and I'm feeling vulnerable, huge, hormonal and tired. I'm the primary earner and the workload has been a lot on top of baby prep and pregnancy. I'm normally a very rational, independent and non-emotional sort of person, and I've never been jealous before. But my husband has a new female friend, Pam, and I've become jealous and possessive. Even I find it weird. Pam is in her mid-20s, white, has my husband's preferred physical features. She's bubbly, spontaneous, in an open relationship. And into the same hobbies as my husband. I have my own qualities, but I'm pretty much the opposite of her. John met Pam and liked her immediately. I remember him coming home and telling me how cool she was, and he'd been invited to a hobby event that she hosts with her partners. He's been attending that every other weekend for a year. Then a few months later, he said he also wanted me to get to know Pam. So we've started having her and her partner Kevin over with some of our friends on the in-between weekends. So my husband now sees them every weekend. To be fair, Pam and Kevin have both been really nice and are good friends with John, but there are some things that I've noticed. Pam sits next to John, and she and John say love you casually to each other with the group. John is very protective of Pam, and he remembers things that she likes and buys her gifts. Nothing pricey, but thoughtful things. If, for some reason, one of the events is cancelled, John gets noticeably sad. Going even a week without seeing them is hard for him. Because of these weekend commitments, we don't do date nights and other activities. If I have other plans, then we split up and don't see each other. We've been discussing in counselling, but we can't come to an agreement. Our counsellor facilitates the discussion but doesn't give direct guidance. I've shared that it feels like he's prioritising this relationship over our own. I hate that these standing date nights, in inverted commas, with Pam and her partners trump our own, and that he's not keeping up with commitments to me or the baby. I'm managing with my own support network of family and paid help, but at 8 months pregnant I need help. This needs to change. He shared that Pam and her partners are now part of his new chosen family, since he's had to move away from his family because of me. I said that it was okay to spend this time with them, and I can't just change my mind, that would be unfair. He said that he's willing to spend more time with me, but then something else needs to give, either chores for him or me adjusting my work schedule. He also says that he thinks I'm overly sensitive and I'm only worried because Pam's relationship is open and my insecurities are something I should deal with in individual therapy. I'm not really sure what a compromise looks like, and counselling seems to cause us both to entrench more. I'm wondering what advice anyone out there might have. Now, I think this is a really interesting situation. It's especially interesting that Pam in this story, the other woman, is in an open relationship. Now, of course, we're looking into it from a post and we don't know the whole story, but it surely seems like the writer's husband is at least considering joining the open relationship. Has he not done that already? I think the most disrespectful part of this whole situation is that the woman, the writer of this story, is 8 months pregnant and also the primary earner. So she's doing all the baby prep, she's heavily pregnant, and she's also working really hard. Now, obviously, in every situation, a husband should prioritise his wife and his family over all other outside forces. But I really do think when a woman is pregnant, it's specific, or when they have a young child, that needs to be, an even stronger priority. Their time together, but also the support of each other. And whether or not he's got something going on with this other woman, Pam, and her partner, or not, he's definitely failing as a husband in terms of being by his family's side during their time of need and supporting his wife when she needs him. I hope that the writer has since come to some kind of resolution and either sorted things out with her husband or maybe even left the relationship for somewhere where she is able to get more support. Tell me what you think in the comments. What do you think about the husband's behaviour? Okay, on to our next story. Am I the asshole for telling my wife that the lock on my daughter's door does not get removed until my brother-in-law and his daughters are out of our house? Interesting one. My brother-in-law Sammy lost his home shortly after his divorce 10 months ago. He moved in with us and brought his twin daughters, Olivia and Sloane, aged 18, with him a couple of months ago. His sister, my wife, and I only have one daughter, Zoe, 16, and she and her cousins aren't close, but they've been getting along fine. Problem is, Olivia and Sloane have no respect for Zoe's privacy, none at all. They used to walk into her room and take everything they could get their hands on. Makeup, phone accessories, clothes, her school laptop, etc. My daughter Zoe complained a lot, and I'd asked the girls to respect her privacy and to stop taking her things. My wife and her brother saw no issues with this. After all, they're girls and they're cousins, and this is typical teenage girls' behaviour, that they said. I completely disagreed. The last straw was when my Zoe bought a $60 MAC makeup kit that looks like a paint set. She had saved up for over a month, and one of the girls took it without permission and ruined it by mixing the shades together while using it. I don't know how much about makeup, but that's what Zoe said when she found the kit on her bed. She was crying. I told my wife, and she said she'd ask Sloane to apologise, but I got Zoe a lock after I found she was moving valuable belongings out of the house because of this incident. Sammy, my wife's brother, and his daughters saw the lock on my daughter's door and weren't happy. The girls were extremely upset. Sammy asked about it, and I straight up told him. He said, "My daughters aren't thieves. It's normal that girls of the same age borrow each other's things." He said Zoe could easily get another makeup kit and shouldn't even be buying expensive adult makeup in the first place. He suggested my wife take care of this defect in Zoe's personality, trying to appear older than she is, and he accused me of being overprotective and babying Zoe with this level of enablement. I told him that this issue is between me and my wife, but she shamed me for putting a lock on Zoe's door for her cousins to see and preventing them from spending time together, saying I was supposed to treat them like my daughters too. Then she demanded I remove the lock, but I said that the lock should not get removed until her brother and his daughters are out of our house. She got mad and said that I was implying that we should kick them out, and said her family will hate me for this. So I reminded her that I let Sammy and his family move in, which is something her own family had refused to do. So she should start with shaming or blaming them for not taking their own son and nieces/granddaughters in. If it wasn't for her family's unwillingness to help, we wouldn't be dealing with this much disturbance at home. Everyone's been giving me and Zoe the silent treatment, and my wife is very much upset. I think this is an interesting situation. It must be a very difficult time for the writer's two nieces, Zoe's two cousins, who have obviously gone through a divorce and they've now had to move in with their auntie and uncle. And potentially they are jealous that their younger cousin Zoe has, they're in her house, her parents are still together, she's potentially got a bit more money if she's getting expensive makeup kits and things. And obviously teenagers can kind of get jealous and lash out and kind of want the items from each other. At the same time, I can really see what the writer's doing in trying to defend his own daughter and, trying to keep her from being upset and keep her from having her things stolen. So I think it's a really difficult situation. Let me know in the comments whether you think he's right or wrong to have put the lock on his daughter's door, and how you think he should resolve it with his wife. Our next story. My husband's childhood best friend asked me for a favour and then humiliated me in front of her family. I'm done being the bigger person. Ooh, let's see. So I, 30 female, have been happily married for a few years. My husband, 31 male, is honestly a gem. He's kind, patient, hilarious, and loyal. Basically everything that you'd want. Which, after having an ex cheat on me with his best friend, is kind of a big deal. That previous relationship had wrecked me for a while, but I've worked hard not to drag the wreckage into my new relationship. And thankfully my husband has never given me a single reason to question him. Until now, maybe. I'm not sure. My husband and I have a great relationship, and we've been pretty social. We often hang out with each other's friends, and I get along with almost all of his group. They've all made me feel so welcome, except for one woman, his childhood best friend. Let's call her C. C has always been cold to me. Not outright rude, just subtle enough to make me feel crazy for noticing it. You know, that kind of vibe. Every time we've been in the same room, she's managed to talk around me, not to me. I really tried with her. I smiled, made conversation. I've been nothing but warm, even when she's given me nothing to work with. She doesn't always show up to group hangouts, but my husband will invite her over, and he always tells me, to his credit. He never goes without mentioning, and he's never weird or secretive about seeing her, but it still rubs me the wrong way. I've tried being friendly, I've tried small talk, hell, I even invited her to our birthdays, barbecues, and engagement dinner, which she bailed on. She skipped our wedding too, and she only ever seems to reach out to him, usually when she's been dumped and needs someone to talk to. When I've brought it up, my husband said that I'm overthinking and that C is just a little odd socially, and maybe she is. Then a few weeks ago, out of nowhere, she messaged me. She asked if I'd be a model for her project, which was totally unexpected, and I was caught off guard enough to say yes. Part of me thought maybe this was her trying to connect, and maybe it was an olive branch. I felt a little bit hopeful. So I agreed. My husband offered to come with me since he hadn't seen her in a while and thought it would be fun to catch up after. When we got there, her family was also involved, and from the second I walked in, it was like I was stepping into some passive-aggressive Twilight Zone. Her mum and sister kept calling my husband their son-in-law. I laughed awkwardly, thinking I must have misheard it, but it only got worse. During the shoot came more of the snarky comments, jokes about the one that got away and some bonds that never fade. Her mum at one point literally said, "We always thought that C would end up with him, but life has its detours, I guess." Or, "C always imagined walking down the aisle with him." And then, "It's sweet for her to fill in though." Come on, I wish I was exaggerating. And C just kept snapping pictures, smiling and saying nothing. She never even said, "Cut it out," there was no awkward laugh, no change of subject, nothing. My husband was clearly uncomfortable. I watched him fidget through the whole thing and clear his throat a few times. He tried to change the subject, but he never came near me during the shoot, and he didn't say too much, just kind of stayed quiet. I stuck it out for an hour and let her take the photos, smiled, posed, did whatever. But the whole time I felt like I was part of a social experiment, and everyone else was in on the joke but me. When we got in the car, he was silent for a while, and then finally said, "Sorry about that. That was really weird, right?" And honestly, I didn't even know what to say, because yeah, it was weird. It was borderline disrespectful. And the fact that he was there and saw it all and clearly felt it too, and never stepped in or pulled the plug, made me feel quite alone in this. I'm just tired. I'm tired of pretending that this woman is harmless or just awkward. She knows exactly what she's doing. I don't want to start a huge fight, but I'm at the point where I don't want her in our lives. Not as a friend and not as a ghost in the corner of our marriage. No more bending over backwards to be the cool wife. I'm not interested in earning points with someone who clearly doesn't want me around. Now this is crazy. So at first I thought maybe it was a little bit harmless. Maybe the woman, the childhood best friend C, was maybe just a little bit awkward, or maybe not very good at having female friends. But the way the family speak about the husband, in my opinion, this just reflects the way that C has been speaking about the writer's husband all along throughout their relationship. Let me know what you think in the comments, but personally I think it's extremely disrespectful of her husband not to back her, but of C and her family also to act in that way. And I agree that C should no longer be someone in the lives of the writer or the husband if they really do want to prioritise their marriage above any other relationship. I know it's hard to kick a childhood friend out of your life and kind of cut that off, but I think this situation is just truly disrespectful and the marriage should be prioritised above all. Let me know in the comments what you think. I think that was a crazy one. So, let's see what the next story is. My grandparents don't approve of my relationship with my black boyfriend and don't want me, female 24, to marry him, male 26. I don't know what to do since I don't want to lose either of the people. What do you do when you find out that someone you love more than anything in the world actually has some bad qualities? For context, I was orphaned at age 8 and my paternal grandparents took me in. They've raised me with utmost love and care that anyone could ask for, and I'm not lying when they say they'd really die for me. I've always looked up to them and they always set best examples for me. I've never seen either of them be unkind to a single soul, and they always taught me to be that way too. Recently though, I received the shock of my life when I saw their reaction to seeing my boyfriend for the first time. He happens to be black. I've never pegged them for racist people and it was honestly unexpected. They tried to hide it, but I could see on their faces that they didn't approve. Since then, they've just never liked the guy. They've always been really nitpicky about him, criticising the smallest of things, and always judging everything that he says and does very harshly. I've tried time and time again to convince them that he's a really good guy, that he loves me and cares about me, but to no avail. Well, he proposed to me, and it was the happiest moment of my life. When I told my grandparents, though, it was clear that they were upset. This time, unlike before, they didn't make any excuses about why they didn't like him. and just straight up confessed to having a problem with his race. At first I was incredibly pissed off, but I even tried to reason with them and get to the bottom of why they felt this way. They think that all black people are really similar to the way they're portrayed in racist stereotypes. This is all despite the fact that he's nothing like the racist stereotypes and how they portray black people. He's college educated, well dressed, well spoken, with a good job and a decent salary, but none of this sways them. I honestly don't know what to do. My fiancé has always sort of known that my grandparents didn't really like him, but he's not suspected that it's because of his race. My friends have all unanimously sided against my grandparents and said stuff like, they don't get to dictate what you do with your life and to tell them to either accept him or I'll cut them off permanently. While I know my grandparents are definitely in the wrong, I can't even begin to fathom cutting them out of my life. They gave everything that they had and more to raise me and gave me the best life that they could. They're the reason I am who I am today. They were always there for me and took care of my every need and always put me above themselves. How could I just abandon them after everything they've done for me? On the other hand, I can't imagine losing Sam either. What do I do? So this is an awful situation, but I think the crux of it is that if you're to be married to someone, then your fiancé or your future husband is the most important person in your life, right? And even if your grandparents raised you and you love them very, very much, you can't accept them if they're being completely unjustly against the person that you're going to marry. I think as much as it's going to be like a heartbreaking and difficult time, I think the key really is that if you decide you do want to marry this person, you have to go ahead and do that, and you have to let everyone in your life, your grandparents or anyone else, know that they either are okay with it or they can kind of go away. You know what I mean? They either go away and come around, or they don't get to be in your life and they don't get to have access to you and your husband and your marriage, because it's absolutely not fair to bring your husband into a family ultimately where he's not welcome and where he's essentially stereotyped against. So I think it's really key that you've got to realise that now that you're engaged, you know, your husband has to be the priority in your life. Although it's a very, very difficult situation, especially given how your grandparents have raised you. So I definitely don't envy the writer. It's a horrible position to be in. Let me know in the comments what you'd do in this situation. Would you cut off your grandparents? So, on to our next story. I, 32 female, purposefully ignored what my husband, 34 male, told me that he wanted for Father's Day. He's now ignoring me and won't accept my apologies. What can I do to make it up to him? My husband and I have been together for the past 9 years, and we have 2 kids, a 6-year-old and an 8-year-old. For Mother's Day, all I wanted was a free day. I wanted my husband to take the kids out somewhere for the day so that I could be home alone and relax. Instead, he got me and the kids tickets to have a fun day out. And it was fun, and me and the kids had a great time. But it really irked me that he'd given me the exact opposite of what I'd asked for. For Father's Day, my husband also wanted a free day so he could stay home and game all day. He games all the time with his friends. He'll get home from work most days and spend some time between getting home and dinner with the kids before going up to his office for a few hours with friends. Instead of a free day, I got him and the kids cards for an arcade an hour away, and I got them tons of tokens. I gave him the cards during dinner on Saturday so that he and the kids could leave early on Sunday and spend all day playing with them. I got my free day and he got to take the kids and make loads of fun memories together. Except him and I got into a fight when the kids went to bed. He was angry that I had ignored what he wanted for Father's Day, and I was angry that he couldn't see that he'd done the exact same thing to me on Mother's Day. He's been ignoring me ever since, and he won't accept my apologies. I mean, it sounds to me like she's, literally gone and done exactly what he's done to her before, and kind of given him a taste of his own medicine, I suppose, showing him how it feels not to be listened to, or even worse, to be listened to and then have the exact opposite done. So I suppose at least he can understand where she's coming from in future when she asks for a free day and then potentially doesn't get given that. The thing I would caution, though, is these people are in a marriage together. They've got 2 children together. And I think the most important thing is that it's not tit for tat. It's not, oh, I did this, so you do that, or vice versa. You've got to, go about it with maturity, sit down and speak about it and say, hey, look, I wanted the free day and you didn't get me that. Can I do it another time or something? So I honestly think the only way to resolve this without more conflict would be to just sit down and discuss the fact that you both have needs to have kind of time to relax without the children, and arrange free days for each other and make sure that this doesn't happen again. I can absolutely see where the writer was coming from, wanting to show her husband how it felt, but I just don't ultimately think she went about it in the most constructive way, if that makes sense. Let me know if you agree in the comments. Would you have done the same thing to give him a taste of his own medicine? Or would you have tried to kind of be mature and constructive about it? Because obviously it's easy for me to read the story and say that, but maybe it's harder to be as mature if you're the one in the situation. Now, for our next story. I broke up with my boyfriend because he yelled at me. I'm a 29-year-old woman, and he and I dated for about 8 months. Our relationship was fine, we did things together, and we had fun. There weren't any obvious red flags, but I always got this feeling that he didn't value me very much. At times he seemed a bit cold and acted like he was annoyed at me for no apparent reason. It all came to a head 3 days ago when we were hanging out at my place. He asked me to hand him the TV remote. I was sitting right next to him on the couch and working on my laptop. I reached for the remote without looking and accidentally handed him my phone instead. I thought it was funny after I realised what I'd done, and I laughed and handed him the actual remote. But he had that same annoyed look on his face and began yelling at me. He called me a stupid bitch. I was stunned. I've never raised my voice at him or disrespected him in any way, and I did not deserve to be treated this way. I told him that our relationship was over and asked him to leave. He told me to calm down and to stop overreacting. I simply walked to the front door, opened it wide, and told him to get out and never to come back. He walked out, telling me I was being dramatic. The very next day, I returned the presents he had given me, as they meant nothing to me now. My friends are telling me that I did overreact and shouldn't end a relationship just because he yelled at me once, and they've advised me to patch things up. His friends have also begun harassing me on social media, but I've blocked them. I'm not going to reach out to him and try to work things out, as some people have been suggesting, because I know that I do not deserve this treatment. I've always treated him with respect, and I deserve that in return. Now, I completely agree with the author of this. What she's done is not a big deal at all, right? She's accidentally handed him the wrong thing while not focusing, and then immediately given him the remote, which is the thing that he did ask for. So for him to blow up and act in that kind of crazy, disrespectful way and to call her the horrible things that he's called her is, a complete overreaction and throwing things out of proportion. And it kind of begs the question, we're all human, right? And if you have a long-term relationship with someone, at some point you're going to do something that's really going to annoy them and really going to upset them. And if this is the proportion with which he reacts now, how would he behave in that kind of situation? And I think when you go down that line of questioning, it's actually a really scary situation. Also, from the beginning of the story, the way that the writer describes the relationship doesn't necessarily sound like it was the most brilliant relationship or even potentially one worth fighting for. She says our relationship was fine. So it's not exactly a glowing review. I can see why some might say that she overreacted as it only happened once, but I think you've got to go with your gut, and when you've seen a red flag and you know that a relationship is not going to work, I think there's almost no point in wasting any time, right? You might as well end it. So I quite respect the writer for what she's done in this situation. But let me know in the comments whether you think she's overreacting and whether you think she maybe should have given him a couple more chances. So for our final story of the day, am I the asshole for laughing in my sister-in-law's face when she DNA tested my daughter? I think this one might be an interesting one. I, 30 male, have a daughter who's 6. I'm not biologically related to her at all. There's no blood relation between us. I was friends with her mother for most of my childhood. We were never involved romantically and we were always just friends. She had her daughter at 23 with her husband. When my daughter was a newborn, around 3 months old, both of her parents were killed. I won't go into too much detail for privacy reasons, but it was a workplace shooting. My friend and her husband worked in the same building and they were both killed. Both my friend and her husband had grown up with less than ideal families and didn't have any siblings, so there wasn't any next of kin for the daughter to go to. However, because I was close with them, I was able to adopt her. Even though I'd been iffy about the idea of kids, I didn't want their daughter to grow up in foster care or around people who didn't have a connection to her biological parents, so I stepped in. My parents and siblings know that my daughter is not my actual biological daughter. My daughter, who I'll call Lily for the story, also knows that she's adopted. I've never really hid the fact that she was adopted, and she knows her parents are dead and that they were killed by a bad man. But I'm saving the details for when she's older. Lily does not look like me at all. She looks exactly like her biological mother and father, though most people assume that I'm her biological dad and that she just took after her mum. And I don't ever really correct this if people assume it because that just seems unnecessary. My brother has been with his fiancée for around 2 years now. A few weeks ago we were all meeting up at my parents' and my sister-in-law saw an old picture of me, my friend and her husband. She pointed to my friend and asked who she was, and I explained that that was Lily's mother. My sister-in-law got quiet and stood in front of the picture for a while. I didn't think much of it. To clarify, she knows that my friend died, but I guess that she didn't know that she'd been married, or that Lily was not my biological daughter. I suppose she assumed that my daughter was mine and my friend's biological daughter together. My sister-in-law got a DNA test done on my daughter behind my back. She used my brother's DNA for the test, and when it came back that they weren't related, she knew that that meant that me and Lily weren't related. She came up to me with the test results and waved them in my face, saying that I was taking care of a dead woman's affair baby. Wow. She said this to me in front of my daughter. I just stared at her for a while before bursting out laughing at this. I told her that I knew that Lily wasn't my biological daughter, and that the thing called adoption exists. Her face went red and she stormed off. My brother is mad that I embarrassed his fiancée, but I said that she embarrassed herself by DNA testing a kid that isn't hers, and then parading the results up to me. What did she want me to do? What was her goal with all of this? Did she want me to break down or abandon my daughter? My brother said that she thought that she was doing the right thing, and he called me an arsehole. I don't feel like the arsehole though, especially considering that my sister-in-law was the one who stuck her nose in where it doesn't belong. Couldn't agree more with the writer. So first of all, it's absolutely none of the sister-in-law's business and completely not her place to do a DNA test on a child that's not hers without permission or without speaking to the father of the child. I also think that even if she had been good intentioned and she'd gone and got the test and she'd found out something that she thought was unknown by the writer, right, that the daughter was not his biological daughter, why would she go and reveal it in that way, waving it in front of him, taunting him? And especially to reveal something like that in front of the child is just completely inappropriate. I think hopefully this is one we can all agree with, that the sister-in-law is absolutely in the wrong and that the writer is in fact mature for being able to laugh at this and for not being more angry with his sister-in-law when she's clearly stepped so far out of line. I think that's definitely the most clear-cut story we've read today. Thank you for joining me this evening. I hope you've enjoyed the Hytale gameplay. I'm definitely really getting into this game. I think it's so peaceful and relaxing, and I'm really enjoying exploring the world. Hopefully we've made some good progress with the house today. I think it looks very, very sweet. And I'll see you in the next video to keep exploring and to keep getting further with the game. Hope you have a lovely evening. Thank you for joining me for this video. Bye-bye.